Welcome into First Take on a Monday. Hope you all had a lovely weekend. Stephen A., Max Kellerman, I'm Molly Karam. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Oh, ready to go today. We got some topics.
We got a lot to get into today. That is for sure. So let's do what we do. Coming up, Tony Romo, unfortunately injured again. Don't miss the guy's reaction, and should he hang it up? That's coming up a little bit later in the show. But we want to start with the 49ers' Colin Kaepernick, who refused to stand during the National Anthem Friday due to his views on the country's treatment of racial minorities. He's been outspoken on his Twitter account on civil rights and issues in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Kaepernick addressed his actions again yesterday with the media and said he will continue to sit for the anthem until he sees change.
I mean, ultimately, it's to bring awareness and make people, realize what's really going on in this country. There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust, people aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change. That's something that, this country stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all, and it's not happening for all right now. These aren't new situations. This isn't new ground. It's things that have gone on in this country for years and years and have never been addressed. I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed. To me, this is something that has to change. And when there's significant change, and I feel like that flag represents what it's supposed to represent, and this country is representing people the way that it's supposed to, I'll stand.
There has been no shortage of reaction to Kaepernick's actions. Among those offering their opinion is Kaepernick's former teammate and current Vikings lineman Alex Boone. Take a listen.
I was upset and disappointed. I mean, like I had said earlier, that flag gives you the right to do whatever you want. And I understand that. Anquan said that, and I agree with that. But at the same time, you have to show some respect, especially in this position that we're in, where we're playing a game for a living. And, it's almost like disrespectful to, you see all these pictures of these veterans that have no legs and they're standing up in their wheelchair, and I had a brother that served and he lost friends, and I know how much it means to him, and it's shameful.
Stephen A., do you like, love, or hate Kaepernick's protest?
I liked it. I didn't love it because I'm not going to say that I would have done the same thing in terms of protesting with the national anthem because of how it could be interpreted. And I'm certainly not going to say I hate it, A, because he had every right to do what he did. We're talking about First Amendment of the Constitution, where it gives you the freedom of speech. Definitely he exercised his right. And I want to make sure that I make this point before I get into what I have to say, Max, about specifically what Colin Kaepernick did. There are a lot of people out there that think about the national anthem and think about the flag. And, they've been getting on Colin Kaepernick because they say it's disrespectful to our American soldiers. I want to emphatically state that I disagree with that. They are absolutely flat out wrong. The soldiers who put their lives on the line and sacrifice themselves for our country, they don't sacrifice themselves so you can do what they want you to do. They've sacrificed themselves so you can do what the Constitution allows you to do, that you can uphold that. That's what they fought for your right to do what Colin Kaepernick did. They didn't do that so you could sit up, so you could stand up at attention at their beck and call. They say you want the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, etc. This is what comes with it. It's the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. That is what Colin Kaepernick exercised. So when people bring up our military and they bring up our soldiers as it pertains to his refusal to stand and salute during our national anthem, that's a problem, because they're not paying attention to what our country is founded upon and what, our rules, our laws, etc. are based upon. So I wanted to say that. Having said all of that, Colin Kaepernick brought attention to something that, by and large, folks had better recognize the black community is feeling very, very adamant about. He was talking about police brutality. He's obviously a staunch supporter of Black Lives Matter. And though some people may disagree with some of the actions we've seen of few folks who represent Black Lives Matter in terms of how they've conducted themselves, by and large, the attention brought to the issue is something that's undeniable. The need for the attention brought to this issue, it's absolutely undeniable. Now, we were in Chicago the other day. talking about black-on-black violence and various other things, and we know that that's a prevalent issue. That's something that I've been screaming about for the last couple of years, primarily. There's no doubt that that's an issue that cannot be ignored. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. I think that issue is bigger than anything affecting the African-American community personally. Having said all of that, that in no way diminishes the importance of brutality on the part of some police officers and how that has resonated throughout the black community. And Colin Kaepernick's willingness to bring that up in this fashion is something, again, I'm not going to say I love it because I would have found a different means of doing it, but I'm not going to hate on him for it either. He's conscientious enough. He's studied enough. He wanted to bring attention to it. He didn't drop any bombs on anybody. He didn't shoot anybody. He didn't harm anybody. He made a quiet, personal protest. And for people to react this way in an incendiary fashion, I'm going to agree with my man Sean King for the New York Daily News when he pointed out that's their problem. That's not Colin Kaepernick's problem. I've got more to say, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say, Max. But I don't really have a problem with it. Again, it's not the ideal way in which to do it, but what we must applaud to Colin Kaepernick more so than anything else, he personified what a protest is supposed to be. We can get into it a little bit later, but as much as I applaud CP3 and Dwyane Wade and Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James and how they opened the ESPYs, they brought attention to a particular subject that's permeating our society. They should be applauded for it, as they were, but at the same time, they in no way forced anybody to take sides. They in no way forced anybody to take a position one way or the other. It was indisputable what their argument is. Colin Kaepernick is forcing you to take sides. That, to me, is the personification of what any kind of protest, quiet or otherwise, is all about. And I applaud him for that.
I'm not going to say I love it for the same reason, because if you say you love it, it sounds like you don't love America, and I love America, and I know you do too.
That's right.
And one of the reasons I love America is because this is such an American thing for Colin Kaepernick to have done. You don't have to stand. And in my opinion, he should love America for that. And I'm sure he does love his right to do that. And for those who think that so here's the irony. For those who protest by not standing up, you get to sit down because you're an American. You don't have to stand up because you're an American. But the irony for the people who complain about it, you should stand up, is that if it's compulsory, in other words, if you have to stand up or it's unpatriotic, then if you stand, you're not necessarily showing anything that's patriotic. It's not a choice you're making. It's something that everyone's supposed to do. How is that really an act of patriotism? And when people bring up veterans, which is nothing Colin Kaepernick brought up, he brought up a domestic policing issue. When people bring up, oh, the veterans stand, so you should stand, that's kind of a buzzword. It's a catch-all. Oh, back off, because when you hear veterans, who doesn't support our men and women in uniform, even if you don't support all of our foreign policy, we all support our men and women in uniform. So people say, veterans stand up, you should too, and that's supposed to get everyone to back off. And I think that's kind of, you're trying to intimidate someone off of their stand. Here's what it seems to me that Colin Kaepernick is saying, and I have no problem with this. He's protesting the manifestation of this country's original sin, as Professor Dr. Michael Eric Dyson brought up in Chicago the other day on our show. He's protesting the manifestation of this country's original sin. And it seems to, which is, obviously slavery and the racism, the institutional racism that black people have been dealing with and our country has been dealing with since then. And it seems to me that Kaepernick is saying that his conscience won't allow him to stand until there is some remedy. There have been plenty of remedies. Things have gotten a lot better, but he feels that it's still not remedied. And by the way, when you look at differences in per capita income, education, and the way the police treat people, obviously he's not wrong about that. It hasn't been perfectly remedied. Then the question becomes, do you feel that we should honor how far we've come, or should we protest how far we still must go? And Kaepernick's personality and his own sensibilities tell him he must protest how far there still is to go. And that's what's great about living in this country. You can, and rather than try to create social pressure to coerce him to behave like everyone else and just to conform, how about acknowledging the fact that he has something to say?
Well, you acknowledge the fact that he has something to say, but let's take this to another level. Let's understand something. This, to me, is the greatest country in the world. To me and most black folks I know, we can talk all the stuff we want to. We ain't trying to go nowhere else, okay? But what we also need to recognize is that we're not trying to go anywhere else primarily because we're in this country, because we hear all day long about the liberties that come associated with being an American citizen. And we see people, taking boats, putting their lives in danger, crossing barriers and beyond to get to this country, which speaks to the greatness of America. We understand all of that. However, by virtue of looking at the other things that take place in other parts of this world, whether it's Iraq, it's Syria, it's Yemen, it's Mexico, for crying out loud, where the list goes on and on. Because we're willing, or because we've had it thrown in our face, rather, what takes place in other parts of this world where they don't have liberties that we have.
Russia, Turkey, Venezuela.
That speaks to the greatness of America. The problem with that is that black folks are saying, okay, that's fine, good and dandy, but what about us? And what about we're dealing with while we're here? Because when you talk about brutality on the part of police, and the reason why I phrase it that way, just for everybody out there, is because there are black police officers, there's Latino police officers, there are white police officers, and by and large, approximately 95%, if not better, are law-abiding citizens who go about the business of protecting and serving our communities every single day. We're talking about the actions of a few rogue individuals who happen to be wearing police uniforms that conduct themselves in insidious fashions. Having said all of that, because it transpires, because what Dr. Dyson pointed out, how you are licensed by the state to be enforcement officials, yet you're getting away with conducting yourself in this fashion. And then Colin Kaepernick alluded to paid leave, which is another way of saying a vacation, for crying out loud, in a lot of people's eyes, while black folks are laying in the streets. Those are very, very real issues. And what it brings us back to is a reality that a lot of folks in America do not want to accept. We have come a long way. We are better today than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. But that does not negate the fact that in the eyes of a vast majority of African Americans in this country, this is still a racist society. It is still a racist environment that black people are subjected to every single day. Per capita income, education, et cetera, et cetera.
Victim of crime.
I'm big on the fact that we got to address our own issues. Everything ain't everyone else's fault. Some things we have to own. But the flip side is that's not a license for white Americans to walk around ignoring the iniquities exercised by some people from their community against black people, too. It's not a license to ignore that or forget that. And that's what Colin Kaepernick is saying.
If you're dealing with the content of his actual point, right, he has a strong point to make about his own conscience and what he feels the flag should stand for ideally, and whether or not we're living up to our ideals, and whether that allows him to stand up for that or protest it to bring awareness. The content of his point is one issue, and then there's the issue of this kind of sense of mass coercion. In other words, you have to stand up for the flag. The thing about the United States of America that makes us different from many other places is not simply that we're a pure democracy. In other words, that the majority rules. It's that we're a republic. It's that the minority is safe, protected from the tyranny of the majority. And that goes for the way our political system is set up, and I like to think that goes for our kind of reaction, our social reaction to someone who takes this kind of stand, whether or not it's popular, and you can agree or disagree or deal with the content of Colin Kaepernick's message. The idea that there should be this pressure to force him to conform and behave like everyone else is anti-American at its core, at our very foundation. The minority is protected from the tyranny of the majority, and here the majority would like to tyrannize Colin Kaepernick into doing something that he doesn't feel is right, whether or not you agree with his point.
The simpler way to put it is simply this. It personifies what a protest is supposed to be about. you are making a sacrifice here. Colin Kaepernick may very well suffer because of this. This is something we'll get into a little bit later on in the show. He may very well suffer because of this. I want to make sure that I emphasize CP3, Dwyane, Melo, LeBron, they should be applauded for what they did because they made an effort to bring attention to an issue we needed to address in our society. But there's a difference between bringing attention to something and sacrificing. And I'm telling you right now, when you look at what Colin Kaepernick did, this was a sacrifice because anytime change has taken place in our society, in our culture, it has involved sacrifice. It didn't just involve bringing attention to something where all sides could agree and there was no dissenting opinion and there was nothing for anyone to argue about. It is usually when you are willing to put yourself in the eye of the storm, just completely either oblivious to or immune to the potential consequences and ramifications that are going to come your way because you believe so powerfully in such an issue that you are willing to pay a price. Colin Kaepernick, if you read his quote, flat out said, I didn't consult with anybody. I didn't ask for permission. I am fully aware that there are consequences that will come from this. And if it does, so be it. At least at the end of the day, I will look at myself and know that I did the right thing and I was right. That is entirely different than just bringing attention to something. And usually when change takes place in our society, it involves this kind of sacrifice. And on that level, we must respect
so you think this will provoke change more so than what we saw at the SB speech?
I think ultimately it will. Here's why. Because at some point, Max, here's what it comes down to. People are going to look at this and have to take sides. Mm-hmm. When you take sides, you're going to reveal yourself. When you reveal yourself, the divide, the schism that exists within our within our American fabric right now is going to form and it's going to come to the forefront, and that's when things get addressed.
I think that's a strong point. Look, Colin Kaepernick may just have a protest personality. There are types of people, protest personalities, no matter what's going on. It could be better. We're not perfect yet. The world will never be perfect. And so I'm going to stay in a permanent state of protest. And there are others who will recognize how far we've come and honor that and talk about how much it's getting better. There may still be work to be done. So he may just have a protest personality, Colin Kaepernick. But to your point about how it's an inconvenient thing for him to do, when it's a convenient time to protest, how much credit do you get for it? Although I give LeBron and CP3 and Carmelo
all the credit in the world,
a lot of credit, but it still was not going to be an unpopular stance. And they probably have a sense of that when they did it.
You said that weeks ago.
That this is popular to do. When it's least convenient, oftentimes, is when it's most important to do it. And the fact that Kaepernick is sorry right now, he's not on top of the world. He's not a quarterback. No one's saying right now, as people did a couple years ago, he has a chance to be the best quarterback ever. They're saying he may not have an NFL future before this. When that's the moment when you make this stand, that's a very inconvenient time for you. To me, making the protest more authentic. I think it's a sincere protest.
I have nothing to lose because I know I'm out, so I might as well now speak up because I'm done in the NFL.
But that's exactly why I use the word like instead of love. Because the reason I don't love it is because he's opened the floodgates to being scrutinized for his intent. See, if let's say, for example, hypothetically, if this were LeBron, it would be 10 times, it would be even 10 times more profound. You know why? Because it's clear that that's the only reason why. Because LeBron's a champion, and LeBron is an iconic figure, the quintessential global iconic figure in sports in this entire world right now. So for him to take a position like this would be entirely different. With Colin Kaepernick, even though I don't question it, there are those cynics out there who will bring into question the motivation behind all of this because he's coming off a subpar year. Then they're talking about how his skills have dissipated. His muscle mass ain't the same. His abilities ain't the same. 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions last year, completed less than 60% of his passes, had a QBR in the 40s. And then it's rumors as to whether or not he may get cut. Right. So now, because of those cynics who may not like what he did, they'll use those other things on the field as an excuse. That's why I didn't love it so much, because he's in a vulnerable position where somebody more elite would not have been vulnerable.
Hey, damn, Cap, while you're down there sitting down, could you grab a weight? Maybe bench press or something while you're sitting down?
No,
Boy, you got to get that muscle mass back.
I agree with what he's standing for, and it's in his right, but I disagree with you guys that this was the best way to handle it. But
I didn't say it was the best way.
To debate.
I didn't say it was the best way.
And by the way, how else is he getting? I know it's trite at this point to say, well, he got the conversation started, but this is front page news today. Would it be front page news if he didn't approach it this way?
I specifically said that I don't love it because of, my trepidation about the, I already explained all of that. But I like it from the standpoint that if you're going to protest, this is the epitome of what a protest is supposed to be. You're supposed to have this kind of impact. Otherwise, why protest? And when you are protesting, if everyone sides with you, something's wrong with that picture. Something's wrong with that.
It's not a genuine protest
not a genuine,
in the same way. Yeah.
We will leave it there. We heard from the guys. Now we want to hear from you at home. What do you think? Do you have a problem with Kaepernick's national anthem protest? Go on to Twitter now and vote yes or no. We'll reveal those results a little later in the show. Devastating news for the Cowboys as Tony Romo will be sidelined yet again. He's wearing a back brace as he begins his recovery from a compression fracture in his L1 vertebrae that he suffered Thursday against the Seahawks. For now, Romo's rehab will consist of rest and immobility, but Jason Garrett will not rule him out for the September 11th season opener against the Giants.
Tony has a broken bone in his back. It's a fracture, and we've gotten a lot of different timetables for when he can return. We also know that he's played with a broken bone in his back before, so there's no reason for me to stand up here and put a timetable on this. I think a lot of other people outside of this building have suggested they know what the timetable is. That's not the world we live in. We live in the world day by day. Do what you can to get yourself better, and we'll update you as we go.
Romo is expected to miss 6 to 10 weeks, as first reported Saturday by CBS Sports, confirmed by ESPN's Todd Archer. So backup quarterback Dak Prescott, who's been the highlight of the preseason, essentially will be thrown into the fire earlier than expected. Stephen A., how should the Cowboys feel about Romo's injury?
On a serious note, let me say that you don't wish injury upon anybody. I know because everybody knows how I like to go off about the Cowboys. I'm a native New Yorker. I can't stand the Dallas Cowboy fan base. We all know this. But in all seriousness, I don't wish injury upon anybody. That man's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got a family, and he's got his whole life to live. And Tony Romo actually is an incredibly nice guy, so you wish him nothing but the best. But how should the Dallas Cowboys feel about this? The operative word is relieved because they have Dak Prescott. They have somebody who's seems to be a capable backup, ready to fill in. They should also be excited. That's another operative word. And the word excitement comes into play because you've got somebody in there that seems to have a bright future, and being that the quarterback is the prime position in the National Football League, and the one that you have is religiously hurt, shoulder, collarbones, etc. He's only played 16 games in 4 of the 9 seasons. He's been the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. When you consider the bevy of injuries that Tony Romo has been subjected to, again, relieved is one word. The word excited is another. Now let me get to the Cowboys. Having said all of that, look, I am not laughing about Tony Romo. I'm not laughing about his specific injury. But what makes me just giggle is that somehow, some way, the Dallas Cowboys are the accident waiting to happen. I continuously have said this for years. I will continuously say it now. What do I continuously say all the time? Molly, you're a witness. You're an eyewitness to this, Molly. Max Kellerman,
can I get a witness?
I literally say this. I don't care what the roster is. I don't care about their talent. I don't care about the prognosticators. I always say, I got folks there behind the camera. Tell me I'm lying. I always sit back and I say, just wait. They won't let you down. Trust me when I tell you something will happen, because they are the Dallas Cowboys and something always happens. It was Tony Romo's injury. But did y'all see the news about Ezekiel Elliott at the marijuana, the
dispensary in Seattle?
The dispensary. Oh, I'm sorry. Your number four overall pick, your first round draft pick, a rookie straight out of Ohio State. You haven't even passed gas in the NFL yet, but they spot you at a marijuana dispensary. Really? These are the Dallas Cowboys. They cannot help themselves. It's somehow, some way, they will get in their own way, they will mess it up, or somebody will mess it up for them. Now, far be it for me to say this, because again, I wish no harm or ill will physically upon Tony Romo whatsoever. But my goodness, if this were RG3, wouldn't we be talking about how he should be taking lessons from the Cleveland Indians? You know, or when he was in Washington, the Washington Nationals, in terms of learning how to slide. Tony Romo is trying to slide, but when he slid, he was actually sitting up. So the weight came down on his shoulder, which was why the back was broken. Had just slid the way you're supposed to slide, okay, that might not have happened. But once again, these are the kind of things that happen. Just a freak accident. Who's to say he doesn't know how to slide? It was just a bad attempt at a slide at a particular point in time. There we go. But this is what happens. Because when we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, the operative word is patience. Take your time. Just wait. They'll find a way to mess it up. I don't know how. I don't know when. It'll be in the season. Might be the regular season. Might be during the playoffs. But somehow, some way, they will get in their own way. And by the way, this won't be the last. And I'm not wishing injury. I'm not saying another injury is going to happen. I'm saying something. When stuff starts to go together, when stuff gets a little bit right, when stuff looks good, you watch. The Dallas Cowboys, something's going to happen to get in their way. This is who they are. It's who they are. Well, and that's all I wanted to say. It's who they are.
It's not just something. It's something very specific. And some days I wake up and think, man, this job is easy. This job, kids, if you can ever get a job talking about sports on TV, do it. It beats working for a living. This is easy.
It's not easy.
Our first show.
It's not easy.
Our first show, I said, Tom Brady's going to fall off a cliff in the next 18 months. When that happens, apparently I'll look smart, even though no quarterback in the history of football hasn't fallen off a cliff by that age. He'd be the first if he didn't. And people are outraged. Oh, my God, how can you say that? So when that happens, I'll look smart by saying people get old. It's unbelievable. And today I get to say, I told you so, because I've been sitting here saying it's not if, but when, because Tony Romo has chronic back problems. So in 2010, he broke the left collarbone. The collarbone's connected to the backbone. You know, somehow. The point is, it's all in this area. Back surgery in 13.
Isn't there a song about that? The collarbone's connected to the backbone. The backbone's connected to... I don't know what the hell it is.
That's right. In 2013, he had back surgery. If you have back surgery, it's never quite the same. I've done Pilates 2-3 days a week for 5 years because I'm trying to avoid back surgery, believe me. You have back surgery, it's never the same. Back injury in 2014, clavicle fracture in 2015, and now a vertebrae in 2016. He has chronic back problems. And post-surgery, the question as to whether he'll ever be able to get through a full season, the answer is clearly no. Now, in terms of the hope about Dak Prescott, he's looked good. I think they found a player. That's like a good job by the Cowboys, finding someone that they didn't have to trade up for in the draft for and all that kind of stuff. But Dak Prescott's a rookie. Dak Prescott has not been zeroed in by first-team defenses yet on an NFL level. Hey, we're going to try and stop this guy. He had some success in his first couple preseason games. He's still a rookie. He ain't going to do much with a rookie quarterback. So the Cowboys are in bad shape. And in terms of the rest of Romo's career, Stephen A. Smith, here's my issue with Romo. I'm going to do a little pop psychologist now, okay? I think that Tony Romo thinks that he's playing with house money. And I question how important it is for him to win a Super Bowl if you compare it to someone like Tom Brady or Eli Manning. And I'll tell you why. Romo wasn't drafted, but he's such a fantastic athlete, and he was so determined, he became the most celebrated Dallas Cowboys quarterback since Troy Aikman. And when you think about what it means to be the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, in this country, once upon a time, it was you were heavyweight champion of the world, or you were center fielder for the Yankees, or and then you're point guard for the Lakers. Like, these are the glamour positions in American sports. Quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys is the #1 glamour title in American sports, and Romo's got it. And a $108 million contract from a guy who went undrafted. In a way, he's already won his Super Bowl. And I wonder, I don't think he's going to retire because he's still got money owed. But I wonder about his level of determination given those circumstances.
I can't believe it.
Versus someone else's.
Look, Max Kellerman.
That's right. I said it.
I just don't know what to do with you sometimes. I'm at a loss. You're going to actually have me here defending the Cowboys.
You like them
because here's my point. Romo got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Determination don't have anything to do with it. I mean, if your back goes out, Max, what's he supposed to do?
Well, he's going to keep playing.
I'm just saying he can try, but the point that I'm trying to make to you is that his determination, focus, or whatever the case may be, have nothing to do with what happened to him. He got hurt. Mm-hmm. That's what happens. Something always happens to the Cowboys. Now, it would be different if he got busted at a marijuana dispensary. It would be busted. It would be different if he got busted stealing cologne and a pair of drawers from a department store. Let me tell y'all something right now. There will never in life be a funnier story that I can imagine than for Joseph Randle to be at a department store, getting in trouble for stealing cologne and a pair of drawers. I mean, there's nothing that could beat that. I can't imagine that anything could beat that. That was just beyond hilarious. I'm sorry, okay? The weed, the DUIs, and all of this other stuff. Oh, no. Nothing is more comical than that. I think, listen, to me, if I was a police officer, I would have let him off just for laughter. I've been laughing so hard, I'd have let him go.
That's what I heard in a long time, King. Go ahead.
Just go ahead, man. That's hilarious to me. Because clearly he got issues at home to go and check. You sitting on a pair of drawers and a cologne. That was about something else, okay? Let's just leave it at that, okay? So to me, if I was a police officer, I would have let him go just because I would have just been laughing too hard. To
your point, is it unfair for me to put this on determination? Yes.
It is.
I'm making a connection that's not there. Because in this case, it's his back. He's never going to be the same. He will always be hurt. You cannot rely on him. In addition, I believe, not that the back indicates this, but I've had this suspicion about Tony Romo given his circumstances. I wonder if winning a Super Bowl, which is the last thing in his resume really, is as important to him as it might have been had he not been undrafted, had he not already hit his lottery, had he not already won his personal Super Bowl. He's a starting quarterback, or was until he got hurt, of the Dallas Cowboys.
If he didn't get hurt, he was going. If he didn't get hurt, he would be playing. If he didn't get hurt, he'd be playing, and he'd probably be balling. But in the end, how should the Dallas Cowboys feel about this? They shouldn't mind that much, because guess what? It's at some point in time, probably sooner than later, you need to move towards the future. The man is 36 years of age. He's got a bad back, collarbone, shoulder injuries. He's just fragile. That's what this comes down to. And what it comes down to is that the Dallas Cowboys should be happy that they seem on the verge of moving in a forward direction. Now, they can't admit this. They can't publicly acknowledge this, but it's the truth. Okay? And that's what it is. And
there's still hope for them, by the way.
Jerry Jones is actually cool because I get to have Tony. I really love spending time with Tony Romo anyway. He comes over, hangs with the family and stuff like, let's have dinner, let's sit the huddle family, because he's like a second son to me. You remember Tony? You remember how Jerry Jones feels about it? He's almost like another son to me. So, I mean, that's really what it is. The relationship's not going to go anywhere. He's going to go down because he was too injury prone, and that might be beneficial to him and his legacy. But it's clear that the Dallas Cowboys need to move in a different direction. But we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about it another time, but here's the punchline for everybody else and not Cowboys fans. There's still hope for the Cowboys. It makes me sick to say it, but it's true. There's still hope. I'll get into it another time.
We shall move on, folks. Coming up next, Cam Newton didn't look like the reigning MVP against the Pats this weekend, so should we be concerned about the Panthers franchise quarterback? Don't miss that discussion when we come back.
I don't know this Max coming. I don't know you right now.
I get it. He's famous. Literally. What have you done with Stephen A. Smith?
Your boys can't come over your house.
I'd like to lick the tears off their faces like Scott Hennerman.
Damn.
People blowing me up on Twitter.
It's the truth. Period.
Me.
And last point is this.
That's a blunt.
Stay off the weed.
Is there a cause for concern in Carolina? Cam Newton struggled in the team's third preseason game. He was only 13 of 29, passing for 100 yards and 2 interceptions. Here's Cam talking about it after the game.
We will be better from this. I'm glad it happened. I'm not glad we lost, but I'm just glad we had an understanding of, we're not that good yet, right? And we will be better.
Cam, this just in, has a new hat, Max, in case you didn't see it. But any concern, any cause for concern with Cam?
No, not at all. I know Coach Herm Edwards says it doesn't, preseason doesn't count, but it matters, and I understand that. And maybe against very shrewd teams, they can take advantage of Cam in certain ways because everyone has weaknesses to exploit. But for those who would say that Cam isn't the pocket passer necessary to maintain that kind of incredibly high level of production he had last year, I would just say you're basing a lot on the Super Bowl, on the fact that one of the greatest defenses of all time, that Denver Broncos defense, and that defense wasn't perceived that way, Stephen A., because they didn't get after the quarterback like the Ravens, you know, with Ray Lewis or the '85 Bears or something. You didn't think of them as a, oh my God, they're coming to kill the quarterback type of defense. They had a great secondary and were really, really good against the pass. The only defense to allow fewer than 200 passing yards per game last year in this passing era. So they're not perceived as one of the most vicious defenses ever, but they were. They're one of the best ever. And particularly at stopping you from passing the ball. And so where they're like, okay, Cam, beat us with the pass, it's not like an average team doing that or a good defensive team doing that. It's one of the greatest defensive teams ever at doing that, especially that one thing, making you beat him with the pass, and he was unable to do it. Okay, does that mean that he may have problems again if he comes up against the best pass defense in the league? Yeah, like any quarterback is going to have those problems. But by the way, he was 12-1 versus the bottom 25 pass defenses last year. He was 3-0 during the regular season versus the top 5 pass defenses last year. He was good and very, very good in that regard. And we're talking about someone who's coming off the season where primarily because of him on offense, obviously a good defense, but he was a one-man band on offense largely. They went overall 17-2, and he led the league by 6 touchdowns with 50 overall. I'm concerned about that guy because of a preseason game? No.
Well, you should be. Number one, because as I've said on many occasions, and I'll say again, Cam Newton is a tier 2 quarterback. Veering towards tier 1, but not there yet in my mind because more than 1 year is what it's going to take. This personifies exactly why I have been concerned. Now, let me be very, very clear. I think Cam Newton is a stud. I think the Carolina Panthers are studs. I think they're the team to beat in the NFC. But, again, like soap operas, you might very well know the outcome, but that doesn't mean that you don't express concern when you see things transpiring on a day-to-day basis. And what I'm saying to you about Cam Newton, let's keep in mind that the Carolina Panthers are not sitting here today as the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. That would happen to be the Denver Broncos. Why would that be the case? Because right tackle Mark Remmers, on Miller to have an absolute field day when he was getting at Cam Newton and in his face all day long. That's a potential recipe for disaster. Now you've got this kid Khalil. He's no joke. You got Turner. They're no joke. They keep him safe. But Remmers, even though they've got confidence in him, still got exposed in that Super Bowl. And more importantly, Cam got exposed when pressure was applied to him. Now you've got Kelvin Benjamin coming back this year after the ACL last year, and we understand that. We also understand that you've got Funches. You've got Ted Ginn. We know what they can do. You still got Jonathan Stewart running the football. Okay, we get all of this. We get their weapons. But the one thing that to me, Max, that you're not underscoring enough is the pressure. Now, Cam Newton handles pressure. The Carolina Panthers, that remains to be seen. The expectations coming into this season are legit. The Carolina Panthers having the year that they had last year, you know, with the old dabbing and all of this other stuff, then went to the Super Bowl, got it handed to them, got humbled, okay? Well, you come in, what transpires? You got Seattle waiting for you. They should be better. Okay, Cam Chancellor's in there from open and tap now. There's no holdout taking place. The defense should be intact offensively. If you get any kind of protection whatsoever for Russell Wilson, look out, because we saw what kind of a player he could be in the second half of the season. You've got Arizona, who are no joke. Carson Palmer and these boys, and what they could do with Fitzgerald, with Floyd, with Brown, and all of these boys, with Honey Badger being back in that secondary, with Patterson and these boys, Peterson rather. You've got all of that going on, okay? Plus, they got Chandler Chandler Jones there now to join with Calais Campbell and these boys. Kim Dichie out of college, who I like better than Bosa, by the way. So you got all of that going on. Arizona's no joke. You've got Jordy Nelson returning to that bad man we all know and love, the one and only Aaron Rodgers. Excuse me, the road to prosperity for the Carolina Panthers is going to be significantly different this year than it was last year even. Because last year, let's be real, once Benjamin went down, we slept on them a little bit. We didn't expect much, and then when they caught fire, they grabbed a level of momentum. They were able to build off of it. The road to the championship had to come through Carolina. They were ready to protect their home turf, etc. It's going to be a little bit different this year. The league MVP, the reigning NFC champions, the expectations that come with it. I do agree with Cam when he says, hey, it's preseason. You learn from this. We'll be better for it because we went against one of the better teams in football, who would obviously one of the more exceptional coaches who we both consider to be the best in the business, in Bill Belichick. But clearly, the expectations are still steep for the Carolina Panthers. They are heavy. Can they respond to it? That's a legitimate question.
Look, put it this way. It's very unlikely that any team, even the Patriots in the AFC, are going to get back to the Super Bowl after they've just made it. It doesn't happen that often. So
well, it can't happen. Why shouldn't it happen?
Well, because there are 31 other teams.
You went 15-1 during the regular season.
That's my point.
So why shouldn't it happen?
You're likely not going to go 15-1 again. Just like the Warriors are likely not going to win 73 games, even though they got Kevin Durant.
But they went back to the finals.
Because basketball, the best team usually makes it. Football, a one-and-done sport because there's no series. You can't play enough games. And it's as luck-dependent as it is compared to basketball, which is very deterministic. Best team wins the best.
So what you're telling me that Cam's not going to go to the Super Bowl?
No, I would say this. If Cam Newton balls out, you'll see it in the numbers. You see it with the eyeballs. By the way, not just Kelvin Benjamin, but the one thing you're like, well, do they have a guy who can get behind the deal? Oh, Ted Ginn Jr. If he could just hold on to the football once he beats the defense, that's good. Like, it could come down to him making a couple plays like that. But the point is that if they win 11 or 12 games and win a playoff game, say have a bye in the first round and win a playoff game getting back to the NFC Championship game, they lose to Seattle or something like that, that's a successful season. You win double digits, win a playoff game. You don't, just because you made it to the Super Bowl last year and lost it. Now, from Cam personally, the main thing I can see that he can do better is the one thing he didn't defend himself about after the Super Bowl: jump on the ball. And I will bet you that given that learning experience, if there's ever a loose ball in the Super Bowl again, that dude is jumping on it. But otherwise, his passing ability in the pocket, all that stuff, people criticize him because the Broncos shut him down. Broncos shut everyone down in that situation.
But he wasn't supposed to be everyone.
Carolina should be better than they were last year.
Supposed to be everyone.
But that doesn't mean they're getting back to the Super Bowl.
I'm just saying, well, listen, you know, you dancing a lot, Max, because here's the deal. The fact of the matter is, we talking about
15 out of 16 games again?
He's the league MVP. According to you, he's tier 1.
Yes.
And all of this, and the crew that they have has remained intact. You're adding Kelvin Benjamin. You didn't lose anybody worth noting. So your defense is still intact in the absence of Josh Norman. Okay? So outside of that, I mean, what's the excuse? All I'm saying to you is this.
They have to get back to the Super Bowl or he regressed?
Excuse me. His performance per se. He threw for 35 touchdowns, ran for another 10. It's 45 touchdowns. What I'm saying to you is that when you talk about concern, it's not just about him. It's about the opposition. The fact that Seattle and Arizona and Green Bay, at the very least, are going to be incredibly formidable, that your schedule is against the NFC West this year. You've got some stuff going on there. There are some impediments, some roadblocks. It doesn't have to go 15-1.
What's a failure for the Carolina Panthers? What's the bar set?
If you don't at least get back to the NFC Championship game.
I think that's fair. I'd say that if they got to make the playoffs and they got to win at least a playoff game. If they have a bye in the first round, that puts them back in the NFC Championship game. I'm with you. And by the way, Mickey Mantle is who I compared Cam Newton to. All this potential, and then he explodes as this incredible world-dominant player. He won the Triple Crown in 1956. He didn't win the Triple Crown again in 1957. Like, Cam may not score as many touchdowns as he did last year. That doesn't mean he's not a tier 1 quarterback. It doesn't mean he's not still in his prime. It doesn't mean that Carolina's still not a powerhouse. It's the nature of football.
I'm glad you think so. I totally disagree with you, but we ran out of time.
Parity in the NFL.
A likely excuse.
When we come back, Colin Kaepernick won't stand, but where do these two stand on the issue? Jerome Bettis is here to offer his thoughts. That debate coming up next. Don't miss it.
I don't know this Max Kelvin. I don't know you right now.
I get it. He's famous. Literally. What have you done with Stephen A. Smith?
Your boys can't come over your house.
I'd like to lick the tears off their faces like
God.
Scott Pennerman.
Damn.
People blowing me up on Twitter.
It's the truth. Period.
Mimi,
And last point is this.
that's a blunt.
Stay off the weed.
I mean, ultimately, it's to bring awareness and make people, realize what's really going on in this country. There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust, people aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change. That's something that, this country stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all, and it's not happening for all right now. These aren't new situations. This isn't new ground. It's things that have gone on in this country for years and years and have never been addressed. I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed. To me, this is something that has to change. And when there's significant change, and I feel like that flag represents what it's supposed to represent, and this country is representing people the way that it's supposed to, I'll stand.
49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick says he refused to stand during the national anthem Friday due to his views on the country's treatment of racial minorities. He's been outspoken on his Twitter account on civil rights issues and is in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. We had a new voice, Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis, to the conversation. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. What did you make of Kaepernick's protest?
I totally understood what he was getting at, and everything is kind of morphed into different issues, but I believe the core issue is him wanting to bring light on an issue that is a moral issue in our country. And the concept of peaceful protest is to get us talking about the issues. Unfortunately, right now, we're talking about what he did and not talking about how we can make this country a better country. And that's, part of the problem that we're seeing here. So many people want to focus on exactly what it is he did and try to take it somewhere that it doesn't need to go. What he decided to do was to create a peaceful protest that would be a lightning rod, okay, that would force you to talk about the issue at hand. Okay, and that is the issues that African Americans are facing in this country. Okay, 50 years ago, the peaceful protests that the civil rights movement went through, they went to jail for that. Okay, so the right for him to have this peaceful protest is something that has not been, it's been fought for from that standpoint. So I understand exactly what he's doing, and I would just hope that we would now continue the conversation that he started, that we can look at ourselves through that mirror and say, what can we do better as Americans? Because we all need to come together.
Look, if you want to criticize Kaepernick for something, maybe you can say something along the lines of he had a kind of nebulous, squishy kind of end point. Like, I'm not going to stand until things get better. Well, things have already gotten a lot better. So at what moment do you stand? Because if you're waiting for things to be perfect, we live in an imperfect world. It'll never be perfect. I guess that is legitimate criticism of him. The idea that it's, well, our veterans stand, so should you, is such a diversionary tactic of people who are against what Kaepernick's doing, because he didn't say anything about foreign policy or men and women in uniform. He's talking about policing issues in this country, and how that affects darker-skinned people, basically, which is a legacy of this country's original sin. I think really his message is, and I find this difficult to quibble with or quarrel with, is we need to live up to our ideals. And in that sense, he's honoring the flag by insisting that we live up as a society to what it stands for and to our ideals, and you can actually begin that process precisely because you don't have to stand for the flag. Like, it's such an American thing for him to do, and I think real patriots would support this. I'm very patriotic, and I support this act of patriotism from that point of view.
The only thing I wanted to reiterate is what I said earlier. When people bring up the military, what they must understand is that you're not dishonoring the military by protesting. You're actually honoring them because what you're doing is exercising the rights that they fought for you to have. And that's the important point, that we need to learn from that. But I'm going to take it a step further. If there is any problem that I have with this, any problem at all, is that just as you're willing to bring attention to brutality on the part of police officers, I hope that all of these athletes, all of us in the media and beyond, are willing to bring just as much attention to black-on-black violence. Now, I remember that Dr. Michael Eric Dyson came on the show Friday, and he talked about his neighborhood violence because white folks are killing white folks and Latino folks are killing Latino folks. People who are in the same neighborhoods with one another, that's who they usually kill. I get all of that. What I'm saying is it's a numbers game. And it particularly resonates with me during an election cycle. Okay, we've got somebody on the right, we've got somebody on the left. We know what that story's about. Here's the other side to it. It's a numbers game. So if you've got white folks making up 66% of the population and you've got Latino folks making up 17% of the population, with the Census Bureau report projecting that by the year 2035 to 2039, the population of the Latino community will have doubled in the United States of America, while within the black community it's only increasing by 1%. Then we wonder why some of these problems afflict us. Well, it might have something to do with the numbers game, because the less our numbers are, the less significant we become, and therefore it's easy to get away with.
You mean in the political process?
I'm talking about not just the political process, but even if you're talking about issues like police brutality and beyond. If you killed a Native American, how much would it resonate compared to if a white person were killed?
Right.
If you killed a black person, how much would it resonate compared to if you killed a Latino in an age where what we're talking about most of the time is immigration? These are the kind of things that you have to pay attention to. It's a numbers game. And then I go to a column today, page 63 of the New York Daily News. Ebenezer Samuel wrote a column that I have to say is absolutely outstanding. It's an outstanding column. Everybody should go and read the New York Daily News today, page 63. He's got a paragraph in here. Allow me to read this. He says, when Colin Kaepernick was done, the rest of the nation could not look the other way either. Unlike LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony and so many of the other athletic activists who have emerged, Kaepernick has forced us to take sides. His actions challenging an increasingly fragmented nation to declare him right or wrong. What Colin Kaepernick was doing in all of this, okay, wasn't just bringing attention to police brutality, but he's doing something that all of us should actually look at just a little bit deeper. He's forcing us to take sides. You know why that's so relevant, Molly, Max, Jerome? Because when you take sides, we know who you are. When you take sides, we know what you stand for. If you have whatever your political affiliation is, whatever you believe, if you feel adamant and you're speaking strongly against this person or that person, but then the election comes and they get 70 million votes, win or lose, what does that tell you about our nation? It tells you something, which is why half the time I'm telling people, shut the hell up. Stop complaining about what you're seeing. Stop complaining about what you're hearing. Chill. Sit back and let them talk. Let's see who has what, so we can find out who you are and what you're made of. And when people are voting, come election day, and over 70+ million people vote for one candidate over the other, are we not going to find out what our nation is made of? So if you're Colin Kaepernick and you're not talking about votes and you're not talking about politics, but you're talking about real life, and you take those numbers into the equation, and you take our political landscape into the equation, and you think about all of these different things, and you bring this kind of attention to it, the people who are willing to be distracting in terms of bringing up stuff that he never brought up and trying to divert our attention away from the issue that he sat up there and highlighted, then we learn a little bit something about them, don't we? It's about that sometimes, and that is what a protest personifies as well.
In terms of taking sides and having the courage of your convictions, plus, you think is it extra courageous? Because Molly and I and Stephen, we were talking about this earlier. Is it extra courageous of Colin Kaepernick to take the stand now that he doesn't have much equity in the league because he's sorry? I mean, you see the pictures of him looking half the weight he used to be, dead arm, all this, might get cut. Or is it like, I might be out of the league anyway, and what do I have to lose? How do you think it's going to be perceived?
Well, it's being perceived as being courageous. Obviously, he's in a fight for a starting position. Okay, so, I mean, yes, his cachet is not what it used to be, but he still has an opportunity to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So, you know, that's something that's, you know, in the background of all of this that's happening. He's still a really good football player. So the fact that he's willing to make this stand in a quarterback battle and he hasn't been healthy, that's saying an awful lot about who he is and what he's trying to do. And, you know, a peaceful protest is meant to be critical. You're going to be criticized for what you do. And that's the whole point. You're going to get a backlash for that. But he stood tall, to his credit, and answered every single question that the reporters have asked him. And that has to be spoken to as well, because a lot of times players they may do something, but they won't stand and take all the criticism and all the questions, and he did that.
I tell you this, and I potentially want to close the segment with this. You might have something to say, but I'll try to pull it off. Don't you find it interesting? Yes, he did lose an endorsement deal. I'm talking about Ryan Lochte. But this man lied, sullied Team USA, embarrassed himself and to some degree the United States of America in terms of how he represented us. And they were talking about him showing up on Dancing with the Stars. But Colin Kaepernick, in all probability, he might have a job in the NFL, assuming he can still play. But I don't think we should expect any endorsement deals anytime soon.
Or a Dancing in the Stars invite.
That's the society we're living in, where somebody can lie, humiliate America, and be rewarded, but somebody stands up for a real issue where lives are being affected, and they're denigrated.
If I had a weight loss company, I consider using them as an endorser. I mean, I tell no muscle building company. Damn, Cap, you hit the weight room.
He was never a big guy.
While you're at it, will you hit the weight room?
He was never a big guy.
I'm saying he was bigger than that. Plus, he was bigger than that.
No, he wasn't.
All right, enough from you guys. We heard from these three gentlemen. We want to hear from you at home. Do you have a problem with Kaepernick's national anthem protest? Please go on Twitter. We really want to hear from you. Tell us yes or no. Vote. We'll share those results and continue the conversation a little bit later in this show. But up next, Tony Romo hurt yet again. So should Romo consider hanging up the cleats? We'll ask Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis that question when First Take returns. Stay here.
Romo's got to run out and slide, and is hit in the back. Oh, he's hurt. Romo's hurt. Grabbed his back, and Tony Romo's hurt.
All the work they didn't put in to get up, you know, to this point, and just to see him go down like that, you know, it's pretty bad.
Tony has a broken bone in his back. It's a fracture. We've gotten a lot of different timetables for when he can return.
Devastating news for the Cowboys as Tony Romo will be sidelined yet again. He's wearing a back brace as he recovers from a compression fracture of his L1 vertebrae that he suffered Thursday against the Seahawks. Romo is expected to miss 6 to 10 weeks, as first reported Saturday by CBS Sports and confirmed by ESPN's Todd Archer. Romo has been hit by the injury bug several times during his career. He had back surgery twice in 2013. He also sustained a small fracture in his back in 2014, not to mention, of course, there's issues that he's had plaguing him with his collarbone. Jerome Bettis still here with us. Jerome, what do you think? Should he consider retirement at this point because he's dealt with so many chronic injuries?
I would never suggest that a player consider retirement unless he's ready to walk away from the game, because retirement is such, you know, it's a finality. You know, it's not, you know what, I think I want to retire, oh, I'll come back. When you think about retirement, it's over, and the game should be, you should be done with the game internally. I don't think Tony Romo is there. So what I will say is, I don't think he should think about retirement, but he should consider his health after football, because that's what it comes down to. As a football player, you have to think about your mortality as a man. And so you say, well, I want to be around to play with my children. I want to be able to do some of the simple things in life as I get older. Now, the injuries, if they preclude me from the ability to do that, then I have to stand back and say, let me think about this for a while. I remember I had an opportunity. I could have possibly played another year, but I thought about me from a standpoint of having children, wanting to play with those children. If I commit to one more season, it could end badly
Is
for
it
me
worth
because
it?
my body was starting to break down. You know, and Tony Romo's 36 years old. He hasn't played a full season since 2012. So these are some of the thoughts that he needs to consider. But then there's also the team. The team has to now start thinking about Tony Romo in retirement in mode because they are looking at the same things that we're looking at. They're looking at a quarterback that's 36 years old that's starting to break down physically, okay? There's no question about him breaking down. Now, what is left in terms of his career and what can we as a franchise expect to see from Tony Romo? I think that becomes a question. I think the organization has to start thinking, going in a different direction. And I think Tony Romo has to actually put that thought in his mind.
I mean, who am I to disagree with you about when a football player should retire? But I disagree. I think that a football player is better off retiring a year too early than a year too late. It's not bad. Like NBA, Major League Baseball, they should tear the uniform off you. You should play until you're just not a major leaguer anymore. Why not? What real damage are you doing to your body? And you're making that money. In the NFL, I always think, you know what? These guys who are walking away, or like half of the San Francisco 49ers a couple years ago, walked away way too early, it seemed, but that's smart. If you've already made some money and you don't feel like running through those brick walls anymore, get out because it is a full contact war game and you pay a penalty in terms of your health. In Romo's case, here's the funny thing. Okay, let's take this year, for example. Let's say he misses 10 weeks, whatever it is. He comes back, has to practice a few weeks, and now he's back ready to play the last 4 or 5 games of the season. And behind that offensive line with Ezekiel Elliott and Dez Bryant and everything, they catch fire. I've seen this, Molly, we've seen this with the Giants, Stephen A. happen twice. A wild card team catches fire and makes a playoff run. Romo is the kind of guy, and this is the kind of team where if they luck out and get healthy at the right time this year, they could be dangerous. I mean, that's the crazy thing. There's actually, in a crazy way, if they can keep their heads above water, you know, be within spitting distance of a playoff team. And in the NFC East, the way the Giants' offensive line looks, the way the Eagles look right now, even Washington, they're no great shakes. They're okay. If you can just stay within spitting distance of 500 and Romo comes back, you could make a run.
I remember this dance last year. We did the exact same thing.
Max, let me ask you this question because you say you would tell him to retire early as opposed to late.
Yeah.
Okay. How long have you been in the business?
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah, professionally,
right?
yeah.
Professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then before that...
They're going to have to tear the uniform off. This ain't full contact.
Hold on, but my question to you is, if tomorrow you cannot no longer be involved in any of this, what do? You have to start all the way over. So it's easy to say for someone to retire a year early. But if a guy has been doing this since he's 8 years old,
and you love
9 years old, and this is all that he knows. He's not an accountant, in the off season. This is all that he knows.
I ain't saying it's easy. I ain't saying it's easy.
But we have to sit back and say, whoa. We can't suggest, you need to retire because this is all that this man knows. Okay, he's fought. You know, and Tony Romo is one of those guys that was at the bottom of the barrel. Undrafted.
Yep.
So he's fought to get every step of the way. And so now to say, okay, you need to retire early. No, when the game is out of you, I think that's when you walk away. Who are we to say he needs to walk away? Now, the organization can say, hey, okay, we're done, but that's it.
All right. I'm Stephen A. Smith. I can say it. He needs to retire. I said it. You know, who am I? I'm Stephen A. First Take, ESPN Sports. The list goes on. Damn right. I'm Stephen A. I'm Stephen A. And I'm telling you right now, Tony Romo should retire. What you talk about what he's been doing all his life. What exactly has he been doing? Let's analyze that. He's been a starter. He's been a starter for 10 years. He went through 12 full seasons. He's been a starter for 10 years. He's played in 6 playoff games. 6. What's the record here right there? What was it, 2 and 4?
Whoa. His record should have nothing to do with whether he's retired.
I'll let y'all speak. Zip it, both of y'all. I got this. This man, this is Tony Romo. $120 million. What's he gonna do? What do you mean what he gonna do? It's plenty of stuff he could come up with doing. He's on the verge this season. He will have collected, I think, in excess of $120 million in his career. For doing what exactly? Sitting up there, putting on the helmet, going out there, either getting hurt or throwing interceptions at key moments, not getting the job done. And by the way, now here's what's going on with Tony Romo. You got back issues after the shoulder and the collarbone issues and all of that stuff. Body breaking down. You're 36 years old. The game is as violent as ever. They got new rules implemented specifically to protect the quarterback, and that can't even help the man. And then he scrambles out of the pocket, don't even know how to slide, right? I mean, everything that could possibly happen finds a way to happen to Tony Romo. So guess what? If you're the Dallas Cowboys, I got Dak Prescott. I got a young lion that has potential. You understand? I don't know what he can do yet, regardless of what we've seen in the preseason. But at least something, I can plan something, because Tony Romo, the only thing you can plan is what we going to do when he get hurt. Because that seems to be the MO. Okay, so when you look at it from that perspective, and you got a team to think about, and a season to plan, and a Dallas Cowboy fan base, the most delusional fan base in American history, who wakes up thinking they're Super Bowl champions even when they won in 15, okay, that fan base still supports your product. They still take care of you. Take care of them. Move beyond Tony Romo, because guess what? Even if he does come back, he's just going to get hurt again.
All that you said was zero. No
Really?
substance.
Zero.
Zero.
I got facts. What do you have?
Let me explain to you why that was zero.
Go ahead.
Let me explain to you why.
Go ahead.
The question was, should he consider retirement? All that you said was about the fans and about the team.
About that.
And now he should.
I didn't say he should. I didn't say he should think about retirement. I didn't say he should think about retirement.
Very quickly. And as a football player, am I thinking about, I need to retire because I want the fans to be happy? I need to retire because I need to retire because I didn't win enough playoff.
You need to retire when you're unproductive.
Well, if you
when he's on the field, he's productive.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. Really?
Yeah.
That's what
That's right.
When he's on the field.
You just gotta hope it's late in the season.
I watch the games. I'm just going to the stats to buffer my points based on what my eyes already see. The fact of the matter is, we are entitled to sit back because y'all ain't playing in front of empty stadiums. Y'all ain't asked the television cameras to disappear when y'all playing.
But
y'all
ain't the only starting quarterback that haven't won a playoff game. I mean, you can talk about a couple players.
Excuse me. When have I failed to talk about them? I don't get on Tony Romo nearly as much as I get on Jay Cutler. Am I lying? Am I lying?
Or Dalton.
Please. Well, Dalton a little less to the degree is more Marvin Lewis. But you know what I'm saying? My point to you is that if you're not getting it done, you ain't getting it done. So you can sit there and say it lacks substance all you want to. I've got my eyes and I got the results, which are minuscule.
When he plays. Well, that's not. That's what I said. Speaking of,
I'm not saying he should retire because he's a scrub.
We got to go to break.
I'm saying he should retire because he ain't healthy.
We'll see what Dak Prescott has now.
Right.
We'll know a lot more about their future, whether Romo needs to get back or whatnot. But until then, it's only been the preseason.
Go play with your kids and collect your money. It's all right.
Such a pleasure to have you. I'm sure you really enjoyed yourself. We'll see you on NFL Live later today. Starting quarterback job is Trevor Siemian's to lose. He actually was just announced as the Week 1 starter. Siemian looked comfortable running the team as he finished 10 of 17 for 122 yards with a TD and an interception against the Rams on Saturday. Gary Kubiak said he was impressed with what he saw from the former 7th-round pick and named Siemian, as I just mentioned, the starter for the NFL season opener, that one against Carolina. By the way, Paxton Lynch played the entire second half of the Broncos' third preseason game, and Mark Sanchez did not play. Max, what does it say about the Broncos that Siemian is named the starter?
It says something important, which is that, and it has a big issue with the Broncos, and Broncos fans should actually be happy about this, Stephen A. It says everything about John Elway's and also Kubiak's job security. That's what this is really about. And more franchises should look at this actually as a model. Okay, you win the Super Bowl, you get to 2 in 3 years and win one. That should help your job security. But as a result of that, the long-term interests of the franchise are aligned with the long-term interests of the GM and the coach. So they can make decisions for the franchise and not just for this year's team, which means your prospects over longer horizons are better than many other teams. For example, like the LA Rams, where Jeff Fisher's like, okay, I got to get myself some runway. Let's trade up for the #1 pick in the draft so I can have a quarterback. People will give me a little more time because they know that a first-year quarterback, it takes some time. That's making a decision, if that's true, based on his own personal interest, and that could be at odds with the long-term health of the franchise. But when Elway makes a choice, it's for the long-term health. What's the real job of a GM in the NFL, Stephen A? It's to properly price commodities, the commodities being the players. Elway looked at Brock Osweiler and said, that dude's not a franchise player. He's a middle-class quarterback. I'd like to give you a middle-class contract. Brock Osweiler says, there's a market for me. I don't need to take a middle-class contract. Elway said, okay, goodbye. I'll try to do the best with what we can this year because I believe in this franchise long-term. I don't want to be saddled with a bad contract. So he picks Mark Sanchez up on a very cheap deal. And when Mark's hoping he can perform, and when he doesn't, he cuts him and saves that money too. So they go into this season with two quarterbacks, Simeon and Paxton Lynch, who've never thrown an NFL pass, a real NFL pass in a regular season game. And that does not bode well for the Broncos this season, even though they did well enough with two quarterbacks who offered them very little last year, other than Peyton Manning's brain, but obviously physically he was done. And it doesn't bode well for this year, but you know what it bodes well for? The long-term health of the franchise, because they're developing young players. If there's a free agent that appeals to them, they could make a run, like a Kaepernick or someone like that earlier this season if the price would have been right. And in the meantime, they're not bogged down with bad contracts. They still have a young, athletic, and excellent defensive team. And Elway can make long-term plans, as can Kubiak. They may be sacrificing this year for the long-term health of the team, and they can do that because of their job security. That's what this move means.
Well, I want to thank you for being the ultimate publicist for John Elway. I mean, after listening to you, I mean, who are we to question anything about John Elway? I mean, my Lord, he walks on water. I mean, are you ready to put a halo over his head, too?
I've seen it.
I mean, listen, he deserves props. He deserves credit, but he dropped the ball on a few things, and I'll get into that in just a second. What I peel from this, more than anything else, is that Mark Sanchez's career is practically over. Yeah, he might have a job, he might land a backup role, but talk about somebody that has lost all credibility, lost all respect. You lose a job as a starting quarterback with the Denver Broncos when your competition is a rookie in Paxton Lynch and a guy by the name of Trevor Siemian who was drafted in the 7th round of 2015 out of the University of Northwestern, a place that is primarily known in this day and age for Mike Greenberg, Mike Wilbon, and J.A. Adonde, more so than any football player. Listen, according to this, all right, this is the guy who threw 27 touchdowns, 24 interceptions in his college career. Last two quarterbacks to start a game from Northwestern was Randy Dean for the Giants in 1979 and Hall of Famer Otto Graham in 1955. Those are the only two quarterbacks in NFL history out of Northwestern. And this dude is the third, okay? And somehow, some way, he beats out Mark Sanchez. Mark Sanchez, who came from Philadelphia to Denver, excited about the opportunity, talking about being a starter, etc. And this dude beats you out? To me, if you're Mark Sanchez, I mean, go back to Southern California, you know, get your hair done, do whatever it is that you want to do. But you as a football player, as a starting quarterback, is over. And the likelihood is that
you guys are wrong for all of this.
You're going to be, at least, you get the butt fumble. Yes, you're going to be a perennial backup, maybe. Let me get back to Elway. Here's the deal with Elway. Molly, you can take your eyes off that footage, the butt fumble. We all saw it. I mean, you fixated on it. It's okay.
Okay, here's the deal. I just felt bad that we were showing it.
You're feeling bad for him. I mean, it happened. It happened on Thanksgiving night, by the way.
I didn't know.
Okay, that's right. Here's the deal. Of course you knew.
There was a butt fumble? What is that?
John Elway, you miscalculated with the whole Brock Osweiler thing. You nurtured him. You thought you had him. You was feeling yourself a little bit. You lost out on him. You tried to make a deal for Colin Kaepernick. That fell through. That didn't work. When everybody and their grandmother was trying to make that deal work, okay? Tried to get Sam Bradford. You know, his agent tried to work out getting there. That didn't work, okay? So when you look at John Elway, yes, he's done a fabulous job as an executive. Yes, he deserves our respect and reverence to some degree for what he already accomplished. But this summer hasn't been the greatest. I mean, the whole Von Miller thing before you ended up getting him signed. You had to match the offer from Miami to C.J. Anderson. You know, you got Kubiak's zone blocking, running scheme. They're going to have to do that. They're not going to utilize the quarterback but so heavily. But in the end, what it comes down to is that Osweiler, Bradford, Kaepernick, all of these things, John Elway appears to have missed the boat on. And if you expect him not to miss the boat on anything, he would be the quarterback position. That is not good.
You make a very good point about Mark
good.
Sanchez, first of all. If you can't win this job where all they're asking you to do is, remember that thing you used to do for the Jets? Just don't mess it up too bad. Manage the game. We got a defense that won us a Super Bowl, like everything, and you can't win that job, and you're so bad you get cut. You're not one of the top 2 quarterbacks. It's probably the end of Mark Sanchez. I agree. My point about Elway, Stephen A, is this. It's not that he's infallible. It's that ideally your top executive in an organization, his interests are aligned not with the team's interests, with the franchise's interests. There's a conflation that takes place in the minds of fans a lot of the time between team and franchise. They're not the same thing. The team is just a collection of guys that year who happens to have on your uniform. The franchise, it's what's going to be there year after year after year. And too many executives, because they don't have job security, have to worry about the team's interests short term at the expense of the long-term health of the franchise. Elway's got enough job security, and so does Kubiak, I think, at this point, that they can worry about the long-term interests of the franchise rather than the short-term interests of the team, and that's good news for Broncos fans.
But you still can't miss at the quarterback spot if you're John Elway. Not that position.
He's played just one NFL season.
He was hoping Osweiler would be a franchise guy. He's not. Didn't want to pay him for it. You can't throw good money after bad.
I'm saying, the only thing you did right at the quarterback position was Peyton Manning.
Pretty good, though. Won a Super Bowl.
I'm just saying, I mean, who's not going to pick Peyton Manning is one point. My point is anybody picked Peyton Manning. Who knew not to do that?
We'll leave it here. We're going to take a hard left turn next, a very serious subject. We're going to react to the tragic news for the Wade family Friday afternoon in Chicago. That's next when First Take returns. A day after Dwyane Wade appeared via satellite on the Undefeated special on ESPN regarding athletes' violence and responsibility, and his mother also appeared in person on the special to speak out on gun violence from the Southside YMCA in Chicago. Dwyane Wade's cousin was fatally shot while pushing a baby stroller on the south side of Chicago. It happened only a few hours after our First Take special show Friday from that same YMCA, which is less than 2 miles away from the shooting. Wade had the following to say on Twitter. My cousin, and let me just mention, she's just 32 years old, was killed today in Chicago. Another act of senseless gun violence. 4 kids lost their mom for no reason. Unreal. Hashtag enough is enough. Stephen A., what's your reaction?
Well, you know, I'm incredibly sad for him. I got a lot of love for D. Wade. He's one of the best people that I know. One of the best, as a human being, one of the best professional athletes I've ever covered in my career. He's just a special, special brother in a lot of different ways. And he's one of the best people. He's a good person. His mother, his sisters, his brother, his cousins, Antoine and the crew. I mean, I know a lot of them, and they're all great people. And my heart goes out to them because they're an incredible family who've withstood a lot of adversity, trials and tribulations, which is well documented throughout their lives, and to come up and through it the way that they have, and for his mother to be the wonderful woman that she is, to have to endure this with her little niece and whatever, your heart just goes out to them. On that note, I feel an obligation to say that. It goes a little bit deeper for me because we were in Chicago Friday and we were talking about the violence within that community. And I want to emphasize again that police brutality is a separate issue. It is just as real. It is just as poignant. It is something that should not be ignored. And people who bring attention to it are right to do so. But it can't be at the expense of this. Because I am of the personal belief that as much and as egregious of a problem as it is in terms of black lives not mattering nearly as much as they should to some law enforcement officials out there and society as a whole on occasion, with the issues that Max brought up in terms of income per capita, education, housing, etc. The reality is that the bigger problem to me permeating through our community is black-on-black violence. And I bring up that issue because it's a numbers game, and the numbers are working against us. And I'm going to reiterate and beat this point home until the cows come home. White folks make up plus 60% of the population. Latinos are at 17% and projected to be over 30% in a few years. The black community is at 13%, and U.S. Census Bureau reports speculate that between 2035 and 2039, by that time, the black population in the United States of America will only have proliferated by 1 or 2% max. Well, what that means is you're assuming that we'll either be dead or incarcerated. Now, there's another thing that comes to that, because you have blacks who happen to have, Latino ancestry, and they're counted as Latino as opposed to blacks. You can look at it from that perspective. But what really resonates with me is that our community is in a world of trouble, and we had better be real about the fact that black lives may not matter enough to some folks, but it's also not mattering enough to a lot of our own. And we've got to speak about that, and we've got to do something about it, because it's got to stop. Because, again, there were 2 black men arrested and indicted on first-degree murder charges. They didn't mean to target her. They were shooting at somebody else, a rival. But nevertheless, she's been victimized. And we have people in Chicago calling for the National Guard to intervene, which is why we showed up there this Friday. Something has to be done.
Institutional response to the American tragedy in Chicago. It's a humanitarian crisis, may not be what it would otherwise be if it weren't black lives on the line, because the history of this country has been, and this is part of the movement now, the counter movement, that black life is cheap and it needs to be valued, and it hasn't always been, and among some, that persists. So there's that, but there's also, look, there's a well-heeled and powerful gun lobby, and the gun manufacturers manufacture millions every year, and as a result, there's an estimated 300 million plus guns. And the reason that's significant here is because whatever the cause is in whose ever neighborhood, et cetera, you know who gets caught in the crossfire? Because you can't get caught in the crossfire of less efficient ways to kill people. But with gun violence, innocents get caught in the crossfire, and those innocents tend to be in densely populated areas of poor people, which includes many African-American communities. Those are the communities that are getting affected by this. And so when Dwyane Wade tweets about it, he's talking about not just violence, but specifically gun violence. In this case, innocent bystanders getting caught in the crossfire. And that is a huge part of the problem. I don't know how you address this topic without at least mentioning that. So I did.
Well, listen, there are white lives being killed by white lives. There are Latino lives being killed by Latinos. It's just that the black community, our number is smaller. And if this continues, it's going to be smaller and smaller. And as a result, it's going to render our community irrelevant in the world of politics and beyond. It is something that has to be said about it. Jim Crow laws were in effect. I don't know the answers to this. I don't know all the causes. People far more knowledgeable than me can speak to it. But Jim Crow laws were in effect for decades. And more lives are being lost today than was being lost back then. What that says to me is that somewhere along the way, even during Jim Crow times, there was a love and an affection and an endearing feeling that we had for one another as our community that does not exist as much today. We need to find out why, and we need to resolve it, and we can't look to white folks and others to do that. Black folks, we got to do that ourselves.
4 children will not see their mother again, and it's heartbreaking. All of our thoughts and prayers are with Dwyane Wade, Nakia Aldridge, their family. She was just 32 years old. More First Take after the break.
First Take is brought to you by Sully, the untold story behind the miracle on the Hudson, in theaters September 9th. And Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
So we asked you earlier if you had a problem with Kaepernick's protest, and the results are in. Pretty much split down the middle. 51% say they do not have a problem with Kaepernick sitting during the national anthem. Reaction, gentlemen?
My reaction is I'm not surprised at all. I think if you delve deeper into it, I think it's going to be divided amongst racial lines, because I think it speaks to the divide that exists within this country in terms of people who feel one way and people who feel another. We want to ignore it. We want to gloss over it. We want to think about how times have gotten significantly better compared to what they once were. But this speaks to how a vast majority of black folks in this country feel a certain way about the state of affairs that exists. Right, wrong, or otherwise, that's how they feel, and it cannot be ignored.
I think it would be more lopsided pro-Kaepernick if it was phrased a little differently. When you phrase a question, do you have a problem with it? Even if you're not aware exactly of what he's protesting, you just know he won't stand up for the anthem, then you may feel as a respondent to that question, if I say no, am I somehow anti-American, right? I think if that was phrased more specifically, if a little explainer went along with what you're really asking, if it's 51 don't have a problem with it, I think that number would go up. That percentage of people would go up the more informed they were on the topic.
We shouldn't have given the trigger word, essentially, is what you're saying.
Well, it's hard to do that in a survey.
No, I get it, 100%.
But, I mean, you know,
Let's go. Oh.
Feel the way they feel.
We want to go on the field, though. Kaepernick has struggled of late. Since Super Bowl 47, his total QBR has declined significantly every season. There are also reports last season that he'd lost the locker room. Stephen A., how much time does Cap have left in the NFL?
We don't know, because it really depends on him and his physical capability. I don't think you'll see him getting anything on Madison Avenue anytime soon. His endorsement deals, assuming he had any, will certainly disappear. I think that as it pertains to his play on the field, that's totally up to him. There are suckers born every minute, and when a Mark Sanchez could have a job in the NFL, you had damn well better believe Colin Kaepernick could have a job. I think that John Elway should be calling right now and try to get him in Denver. But in the end, what it comes down to is Colin Kaepernick has to perform. He has to look better than he has looked now.
Agreed, and I think the Denver point is right on. Look, Kaepernick's going to get more looks, even though this seems like an unpopular issue in NFL locker rooms at the moment. Because if he's healthy and can play at 80% of what he once was, and given his age, I don't know why he couldn't, that's good enough. He went to a Super Bowl. He came one throw away from going to back-to-back Super Bowls. Right. The man can play on the NFL level at a high level.
And let's be fair to him. Jim Harbaugh was a great, great coach. You know, internal friction with him and Balky and those guys, and ultimately York, has ruined that franchise and has them in the state of affairs. And Colin Kaepernick has been a sacrificial lamb and all of that. Had that situation, continuity existed, he might look a lot better than he has looked.
If he hit the weight room, he'd look a lot better. Hit the weight room,
You could also throw out the Cowboys, just saying, if they don't know what with Dak Prescott to have another quarterback on the roster.
I don't wish that on anybody, because now you're talking about the proverbial black cat walking around and contaminating Colin Kaepernick. We don't need that.
Well, it's got to be a black cat.
Don't need that at all. You're right about that. I've always said that. Don't have to be a black cat.
Steve Spurrier here tomorrow. We're looking forward to that. He has a new book. We'll dive into some college football subjects with him, so that'll be positive as well, right?
Right, old ball coach.
All right.
More positive show tomorrow.
Yes.
A lot of deep issues to touch on today.
Yes, of course.
So,
and the other thing, too, that I want to mention again, what we brought up, but being in Chicago and having that show at that Southside YMCA, and then just a couple miles right after, and having Dwyane Wade's mother and him also speaking on it the night before.
And then for his cousin.
It's tragic. It's heartbreaking.
And, you know, like I said, I want to reiterate this. I challenge anybody to find a better professional athlete as a person than Dwyane Wade, and a better, you know, crew of family members and loved ones. I mean, I know a lot of these people, especially his wife, Gabrielle Union's been a friend for years. They're phenomenal people, and I'm very sorry. My heart goes out to them.
Personal responsibility is an important issue. I wouldn't deny that. But until institutional changes are made, until severe poverty there's something to address that, and the availability of guns, these kind of things will continue to happen no matter how much we talk about it.
Exactly. Back tomorrow with Steve Spurrier.